Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study entitled Matriarchs, and we're looking at the women of the book of Genesis. And we began our study by looking at Sarah, the first woman that we meet who we know a lot about, who's fully realized in the text. And now we want to talk about Hagar, the enslaved woman who belonged to Sarah, who was in her household, the Egyptian woman who was there. And we're going to take two or three sessions to talk about her. Um, she's not someone we think about much, although she has two long sections devoted to her in the book of Genesis. Her name, Hagar, depending on whether it's an Egyptian name or a Semitic name, can mean something like to flee, to wander, or maybe to be forsaken. But none of those meanings are very pleasant. And it makes you wonder if this was her given name or the name she came to be called. She belongs to Sarah, and whether she um, belonged to Sarah before they went into Egypt, Sarah and Abraham, or whether she was acquired in Egypt. She is an enslaved person in their household who belongs directly to Sarah, and she is an Egyptian. So, Abraham and Sarah have been promised a child, and they have been promised that all the promises God has made to Abraham, to them together, will be fulfilled through the birth of this child and the subsequent offspring that this child will produce. But they are beyond childbearing years at this point. She is, and he is old. He's not too old to father a child, as we'll find out. But Sarah gets impatient waiting, and so she does something that is done and that will be done later on in the book of Genesis. She takes her servant, her maid servant, her enslaved person that personally belongs to her, and gives her to her husband so that this woman can bear children to her. This was done. This was a common practice in the Levant, in the Middle East, in Mesopotamia at that time. Not many people were wealthy enough to own enslaved people, but those who were, a woman could take her enslaved person, and every child born to that woman would then be considered her child. That was done. It's very Handmaid's Tale, I know. But Margaret Atwood made clear when she wrote that book, she only included things in it that people had already done in human history. Well, that's being done here. And so let's read the text. Um, this is Genesis 16, beginning with verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar or Hagar. And Sarai said to Abraham, Now look, Yahweh has prevented me from bearing. Please go into my maid. Perhaps I shall obtain children through her. And Abram listened to the voice. Shema B'kol. Sometimes that is translated to listen to the voice, but it's also the phrase that is translated obey. There's no word obey in Hebrew at this time. It's Shema B'kol, to hear the voice. So it could be translated, and Abram obeyed Sarai. And after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Abram's wife, Sarai, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, gave her to her husband Abram as his wife. Now that's interesting, as his wife. Does that mean that they were considered husband and wife, or that she was the surrogate for her? And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her sight. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done me be upon you. I gave my maid into your arms, but when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her sight. May Yahweh judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, Behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her what is good in your sight. So Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. Okay. Sarai, her name hasn't been changed yet, of course. doesn't come off very well in this whole episode. In the first place, she's faithless in not waiting for God to do God's thing in God's way. But it also means that she is a woman of faith. She believes completely that God will only keep his promises like he said he would through the child that Abram would have. So she wants to intervene and help God's plan along because she believes in God's plan. She just doesn't trust God to do it himself. So she gives Hagar to him, and quite quickly, Hagar becomes pregnant. Um, where is Hagar's agency in any of this? Well, it's non-existent because she doesn't have any. She is an enslaved person. But when she becomes pregnant and has this role of importance, when she carries what they think to be the child of promise, or the only child that Abram has fathered thus far, then she has value. In their culture, this was a value, the ultimate value. And so this enslaved woman starts to see her own value. And according to Sarah, well, also according to the word, her mistress was despised in her sight. In other words, she no longer viewed herself as subservient to Sarah, which really angers Sarah. And Sarah blames Abram for all of it. Why would she blame Abram for it? Well, because he's the man. No, that's not fair. Well, it's true, though. Anyway, why would she blame Abram for it? Because he's head of household. And it's his job to make sure people in the household are know their place. So when she says the Lord judge, she doesn't say between me and Hagar. She says between me and you. And what he says to her is, she is your maid. You take care of this. And so what happened was Sarah treated her harshly. That word almost always denotes violence, although sometimes it can mean to heap upon hard labor. To be given harsh treatment can mean to be given hard labor. Either way, she's pregnant, and either one of these things is abuse. So she is abused by Sarah one way or the other. Probably, I would suspect in both ways. Um, and so she flees. And we'll talk about what happens, which is quite remarkable next time. This is one of two entire chapters, really, that are devoted in Genesis to Hagar's story. We'll pick up with verse 7 next time. Thank you for joining for another 5 good minutes with the Word.